Ena bhutale swayam rupa kadamayam dadati swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganath Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaganath Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamshcha Hey Krishna Karino Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We'll be looking at chapter 1, text 30 through 40, Bhagavad-gita, as it is. Together. Nacha shakolmya vashtatum brahma maitvad cha mamanaha nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. Translation. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Keshi demon. Text 31. Nachashreyo nupashami hatva svagyanam ahave na kankshe vijayam krishna nacharajyam sukhani cha. Translation. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. Text 32 through 35. Kim no rajyena govinda, kim bogir jivitena va, yesham arte kankshitam, no rajam boga sukhani cha. Ta ime vastita yudhe pranam styaktva dahani cha acharya pitara putras tataiva cha pita maha matula svashura pautra shalya sambandinastata etan nahantum ichami nyato pi madhusadana Api Trilokya Rajasya Heto Kim Nu Mahi Krite Nihatya Dharatarshastam Naka Priti Shajjanardana. Translation. O Govinda, of what avail to us are kingdoms, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed in this battlefield? O Madhusana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and all relatives are ready to give up their lives and proprieties and are standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them, though I may survive? O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. Text 36. Papam eva shayad asman hatvaitan atayaninaha tasman narha vayam hantum dartarashtran svabandavan svagyanam hikatam hatva sukhina shama madhava. Translation. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Text 37 through 38. Yadyapyete na pashanti lobhopahata chetasaha kulakshaya kritam dosham mitradrohe chapatakam katam nagenam asabi papad asman nivartitam kulakshaya kritam dosham prapashad bir janardana. Translation. O Janardana, although these men, overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? Text 39. Kula kshaye pranashyanti, kula dharma sanatanaha, dharme nashte kulam krishnam, adharmo bibhavanti yata. Translation. With the destruction of dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligious practice. Text 40. Adharma bibhavat Krishna pradushyanti kula sriyaha Srishu dushta suvarshtena jayate varna sankaraha. Translation. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. Back to text 30. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Keshi demon. Purport. Due to his impatience, Arjuna was unable to stay on the battlefield, and he was forgetting himself on account of the weakness of his mind. Excessive attachment for material things puts a man in a bewildering condition of existence. Bayam dvityat biniveshataha. Such fearfulness and loss of mental equilibrium take place in persons who are too affected by material conditions. Arjuna envisioned only unhappiness in the battlefield. He would not be happy even by gaining victory over the foe. The word nimitta is significant. When a man sees only frustration in his expectation, he thinks, why am I here? Everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in Supreme Self. Arjuna is supposed to show disregard for self-interest by submission to the will of Krishna, who is everyone's real self-interest. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains. Arjuna thought that his victory in the battle would only be a cause of lamentation for him. So Srila Prabhupada speaks of the weakness of the mind. Arjuna was unable to stay on the battlefield and he was forgetting himself on account of the weakness of his mind. So it's clear that the mind can be strengthened or from a weakened state. And Krishna is trying to strengthen Arjuna's mind, and we're trying to strengthen our minds and have complete conviction. You know, it's obvious that Krishna wants us to have complete conviction in him, and he's our creator, and he's perfect, you know, and he's full of six opulences, you know, wealth, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, renunciation. And so he's perfect. So it's quite a lofty goal, and it's of course unattainable for us to become perfect on the level of Sri Krishna. But he loves to see us strive for perfection, and he loves, you know, we are part and parcel of him. And so he loves to see us reach for that. and he knows we can either, he's given us free will, so we can either step down or we can try to keep going up, you know? And it's like that goal of perfection where it's like we never will quite get there potentially, but if we can keep striving for it, that is the goal, is to never stop striving for perfection and trying to purify ourselves and purify our minds and our whole existence, to try to respect our creator and to try to follow in his footsteps, which he has so clearly elucidated in Bhagavad-gita as it is. And he's trying to help us, and he gives us his form to worship so nicely. Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. The deities look so beautiful today, and the kirtan was so beautiful, and the smell of the incense just overwhelmingly beautiful. So he wants us to be happy, and he wants us to enjoy these things that after we offer them to him, we get to enjoy them, and because he's come in contact with them, and when he eats prasad, and by glancing over it, and his transcendental saliva mixes with it, and then we're allowed to take it and we get to enjoy it. And so he's given us the forms, the deities, you know, because he knows we're going to focus on something with our eyes. So he knows it's either we're going to focus on something material or spiritual. And so he's given us these, he just descends in the deity form to allow us to absorb ourselves and our senses in worshiping him. And how beautiful is it to see the deities, you know, from around the world, but so opulently garlanded, and so many pujaris have taken such great care to make the altar so beautiful, and it's just overwhelming. It's almost overwhelmingly beautiful. And why would we want to go out and look at something mundane or something material when we have the most beautiful things to look at? And he also says at the bottom of this purport, I thought it was striking when he said, everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the supreme self. And he's talking about the non-devotees here. No one in the material world is interested in the supreme self and learning more about him until they get a taste, until someone gives them the rope when they're out there in the ocean and they can grab onto it. And they're very interested in themselves, and so they've got so many doubts, and they don't know. They're constantly serving their tongue and weakness of the mind. And it seems like so many people seem to be so thirsty after work that they have to go to a bar, or they text each other and say, want to get a drink. And it's like their birthright to go to a bar. And some people are going every day or at least a few times a week. And they might be thinking, where's the fun if I don't drink, they think. And it's kind of we're all kind of grown up children, it's like grown up babies with pacifiers to some extent. Instead of where's my binky, it's like, where's my drinky? And what do Americans do when they turn 21? Usually, it's a tradition to go out to a bar and drink, and then your friends buy you as many shots as you can handle, which is actually very dangerous. I'd like to know the statistic of about how many people actually die on their 21st birthday because they're trying to have fun. Their friends want them to have fun, but they go way overboard and they succumb to alcohol poisoning or some calamity. So these things that they think is enjoyment, is actually very dangerous. And it's like a snake or something. You have to respect a snake or a knife. Almost everything we're being taught to respect everything, every person, animal, and object to be respected, because, if you're careless with a knife, it can be dangerous. And if people are so careless and they think they're being social, and you see these little bars, these little dive bars, as they call them, and you just wonder, who are the people in there day after day that are putting their money, all their money, and for some hope, for some fantasy, to keep some fantasy alive. We're also learning to not live in this fantasy world and focus more on reality. And they're thinking, well, maybe I might meet someone, or maybe I can tell a great joke, and maybe I'll meet a new friend. And it often, most of the time, it turns out to be quite disappointing, but they go back and back, and it's quite sad. And they're putting coffee and meat and smoke and alcohol, and sometimes they say, well, yeah, it's 10 a.m., but you can have a drink, just take the edge off, and they're relying on these things. And we're trying to rely on prasadam. We like to indulge in prasadam a little bit, and but we're learning how to not fall into these pitfalls, these traps. And they're really just trying to kind of numb the pain and lose themselves. And it's not really happiness. The absence of pain is not real happiness. And it's much beyond that. And I saw a sign outside of a bar recently that said something like, very strange, something like, God gave us beer to ease the pain of being self-aware, or something like that. And so they think that beer is a gift from God, and that it's so horrible to be self-aware, but we in this human birth can actually make spiritual progress, and we want to keep advancing, and we don't want to go down to a lower birth. We don't want to go down to a worm. Imagine being born again as a worm. Karma means take another body after this body. So the good news is the soul is eternal, and you never really die. So this body is just a vehicle, just a shirt that can be thrown away. That's the good news. But we have to take advantage of this human form of life, because if we're not careful, people can be going down. You can be born again as a human, and a more elevated, with a pious family, or maybe you could be born again in the spiritual world and get a completely spiritual body. Or some people could be born again as a tree, if Krishna thinks they need to learn the lessons of a tree, which is tolerance. A tree is very tolerant, and you can cut a tree down and it doesn't complain. Or some people are being born again as a worm, or a dog, or a hog, if they want to just simply enjoy sex life or something like that, illicit sex. Then the dogs and the hogs can do this on a greater scale than we can do this. So it's where your consciousness is, especially at the time of death. So we're trying to train our consciousness by chanting the Maha Mantra, by chanting 16 rounds a day, at least. We're trying to train our consciousness, and it becomes a beautiful thing. We're the lucky ones that get to chant. It's a beautiful thing, and it's not a burden. It's freeing. It's getting the weeds out of our heart. It's uplifting so many weeds and replacing them with flowers. And as you chant your 16, you feel the beauty of the mantra more and more as you go through it, until it just flows very easily like water, and it all makes sense. And Lord Chaitanya, gave us this mantra, and Radha, the gopis are such elevated, the most elevated, because they never forget Krishna. And when Krishna left the town, and they cried the rest of their lives, and remembered him constantly, but they were never separated from him. There's something called Vipralamba Seva, or thinking of Lord Sri Krishna in separation, and it's considered far better than serving Krishna directly, according to the Nectar of Instruction into the 10th chapter. There's no difference between thinking of Lord Sri Krishna and associating with him. And Radharani is the highest. No one can pass her. Even Lord Sri Krishna cannot understand her, and that's why he took the position as Lord Chaitanya. And so we don't want to imagine being born as a worm, and imagine being almost aware that you have to go up the cycle again, and to try to hope to get to a human birth someday. It could take a very long time. So we want to take full advantage of this chance we have to go as deep into Krishna consciousness as we can. No matter who you are, no matter what your walk of life is, you can dovetail it in Krishna consciousness, and you can try to keep going, just keep elevating more and more. It can be small steps, it can be big steps. Just don't take any steps backwards, because you think about a train. A train can go with train on good tracks. It can go along pretty nicely with not too much energy, but imagine trying to push a train from a complete stop. If a train is stopped, it's very hard to get it going. It needs a lot of energy to get it going. But once it gets going, it can travel very far. And all the meat, sometimes at First Friday, we see sometimes all these food trucks and people are enjoying, and they're all basically meat stations and cheap meat. It takes less work really to produce animal meat, because the animals just keep on producing. If you put them in a pen together, you get more animals. And so it's a little bit of laziness. Growing vegetables is a little bit harder. You have to make sure you perform some sacrifice, to get the rains for the yagya. You have to chant the Maha Mantra, and different seasons. It's hard to grow vegetables different seasons, and meat is cheap and easy, and people think it's pleasure, but they don't know what the true pleasure is of a really, really good prasadam that we're lucky enough to get to have so much of, and try to train our tongues. The train is the most voracious, the hardest to control. And so we're trying to train our tongues to taste very nice things that that you can actually offer to Krishna, and things that he's, a flower, a water, a fruit, a leaf, things that he says, these are the things you can offer me. And they're not really satisfied. They may be satisfying their tongue temporarily, but they're really, as the digestive process works, they're not really satisfied. A lot of us may remember that feeling of not really being satisfied with foodstuffs and with meat and things like that. So we said we want to become vegetarians, and there's no real satisfaction in there. And actually, the human digestive system isn't like a carnivorous animal. It's a carnivorous animal is more of a straight shot, and then our digestive system is really designed to take vegetables, fruits, and grains, and these things will be accepted very nicely. And when it's offered to the Lord, the feeling of satisfaction is so intense afterwards, and so it gives us the fuel that we need to go throughout our day and chant our 16 rounds and try to help other people and give them a helping hand, and get to associate with each other, and find out how each other is doing, and grow together, in this time. As things will be different down the road, but we're trying to enjoy every day and get the most out of it we can, and serve Sri Krishna. And I have a feeling that no one can read the Srimad Bhagavatam and still be an atheist. I don't think anyone could read that, and it absolutely Srila Prabhupada's books absolutely prove there's so he produced so many books, and he poured his heart and soul into them, and only slept a few hours a night, and he did so much in a short period of time, and he did so much throughout his whole life. But they're so self-evident when you read them. They're so amazing. You just wonder, it's just amazing. But going on to 32, text 32, O Govinda, of what avail to us our kingdom's happiness or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed in this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and all relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them, though I may survive? O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. Purport. Arjuna had addressed Lord Krishna as Govinda because Krishna is the object of all pleasures for cows and the senses. By using this significant word, Arjuna indicates what will satisfy his senses. Although Govinda is not meant for satisfying our senses, if we try to satisfy the senses of Govinda, then automatically our own senses are satisfied. Materially, everyone wants to satisfy his senses, and he wants God to be the order supplier for such satisfaction. The Lord will satisfy the senses of the living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covet. That's a famous sentence. I'll read again. The Lord will satisfy the senses of the living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covet. But when one takes the opposite way, namely, when one tries to satisfy the senses of Govinda without desiring to satisfy one's own senses, then by the grace of Govinda, all desires of the living entity are satisfied. Arjuna's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here partly due to his natural compassion for them. He is therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed in the battlefield, and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. So he's a little scared that part of him is scared that he will kill these friends and family, and that they will get to go back to the sun planet maybe, but he won't as Arjuna. And imagine becoming a billionaire or something like that, but imagine all of a sudden everyone in the world is gone. All of a sudden becoming a billionaire doesn't really matter. This is kind of like Arjuna's thinking. Why would I want the kingdom if all my friends and relatives are gone? But he's also thinking that, but it is Lord Sri Krishna's plan, and Arjuna does not know, but these people are already dead. He just needs to act like an instrument. He's kind of also saying, Krishna, can you kill them? You won't get any reactions. You're supreme. Can you do it? And it's Krishna wants him to be a tool, and empowered by him. So he's also, it's like we're trying to cultivate the intelligence to ask questions and the courage to question those questions. Some of Arjuna's questions are revealing in the fact that they might be trying to justify his own views and choices. And Krishna responds by questioning those questions. And so Arjuna is mistakenly identifying with the body. And once Arjuna gets his spiritual vision, he finds his questions automatically answered. And without the ability to question our questions, we may try to keep the Gita's wisdom as a part of us while allowing materialism to also be a big part of us. So Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena seviya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshинaham. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. 36. Sin, translation, sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Purport. According to Vedic injunctions, there are 6 kinds of aggressors. Number 1, a poison giver. Number 2, one who sets fire to the house. Number 3, one who attacks with deadly weapons. Number 4, one who plunders riches. Number 5, one who occupies another's land. And 6, one who kidnaps a wife. So these things all happened to the Pandavas. And so that's even more reason why Arjuna is empowered to do these, to fight on the battlefield, because according to Vedic injunctions, these 6 things have happened to the Pandavas. And then on the purport, he says towards the end of the purport, after all, kingdoms and pleasures derived therefrom are not permanent. So why should he risk his life and eternal salvation by killing his own kinsmen? Arjuna's addressing of Krishna as Madhava, or the husband of the goddess of fortune, is also significant in this connection. He wanted to point out to Krishna that as husband of the goddess of fortune, he should not have to induce Arjuna to take up a matter which would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotees. And, like a manager that works in the top of a skyscraper might fantasize that he's the king of the world or she's the king of the world or something, if they're late at night by himself or herself. But in a matter of a few years, someone will replace him and the buildings will come down. These are, temporary buildings. They'll come down in a short period of time. Most of these tall buildings have only been here for 200 years or less. Who can say they will be here for another 200 years? Destruction is easy and quick. A whole city can be destroyed very quickly. Actually, so many things can be destroyed if they aren't maintained and preserved. And Vishnu is the preserver. Going on to 39, with the destruction of dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligious practice. Purport. In the system of the Varnashram institution, there are many principles of religious traditions to help members of the family grow properly and attain spiritual values. The elder members are responsible for such purifying processes in the family, beginning from birth to death. But on the death of the elder members, such family traditions of purification may stop, and the remaining younger family members may develop irreligious habits and thereby lose their chance for spiritual salvation. Therefore, for no purpose should the elder members of the family be slain. And Arjuna is worried that if he kills them irreligiously, that, in the next verse, he talks about the women of the family, and he's worried that if they think he's irreligious, then they might follow in his footsteps, and it might open the door for other people to act irreligiously. And we see so many nice devotee families where they're taking the Vedic traditions and passing them on to their children, and the children are it's amazing how well behaved they are compared to a child you might see in a grocery store, maybe throwing a tantrum or something. They are giving the teachings to the children, and the children are so well behaved and so nice and polite. And so a lot of things do come from India. It's kind of an unbroken, it's Krishna's land, and it's unbroken, the Vedas and Sanskrit. you can see in so many languages that it's a seed language, that a lot of most all languages come from that. And you can see so many evidences of the Vedic tradition around the world, in everything from the pyramids to culture and the music and art. And it's amazing to think about, but so much of it does come from India. So it's an inspiration. And our heart goes out to the big train accident that happened last week, that took the lives of so many. And it actually happened. You can see an ISKCON temple right there, right in the background, actually. So an ISKCON temple has been getting a lot of video and pictures of that ISKCON temple right now. But there's like a train derailed in front of it. So that was pretty traumatic for a lot of people, and we wish them the best, and know that that if they turn to Krishna, then everything, their lives will be purified and perfect. Verse 40. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. Purport: good population in human society is the basic principle for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. The Varnashram religion's principles were so designed that the good population would prevail in society for the general spiritual progress of state and community. Such population depends on the chastity and faithfulness of its womanhood. As children are very prone to be misled, women are similarly very prone to degradation. Therefore, both children and women require protection by the elder members of the family. By being engaged in various religious practices, women will not be misled into adultery. According to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. So the different family traditions of religious activities should always engage them, and thus their chastity and devotion will give birth to a good population eligible for participating in the Varnashram system. On the failure of such Varnashram dharma, naturally the women become free to act and mix with men, and thus adultery is indulged in at the risk of unwanted population. Irresponsible men also provoke adultery in society, and thus unwanted children flood the human race at the risk of war and pestilence. And it becomes harder for everyone to make spiritual advancement. When everyone is degraded, it becomes 10 times as hard or more to make spiritual elevation. And men are just as guilty as women. If it seems like if one group tries to become pious, the other group will almost double down and make it harder for the other group. And every summer around this time of year, we see the new clothing styles of the summer, and things are more shocking than ever. You see this summer where you see more and more things hanging out than even last year. And it becomes hard to make spiritual advancement for people, and you end up with unwanted progeny. And people are searching for an identity. It's like people, you might see people compare their tattoos or something, and it's like I have a tattoo of a tiger, and this is why I got the tiger on my body, or an orca or some sort of dolphin or something. And so that's my spirit animal or something. So they're looking for an identity, but they should find their spiritual identity and look for that. Hopefully at a certain point, they look for their spiritual identity and go deeper into that. And we're only happy when we're serving. We love helping. People love helping. People love serving, whether they know it or not. And I just find life is really beautiful when you can help. When you can help, we want to feel like we're helping. That's one of the best feelings. That I'd like to help. I want to help, even if it's opening up the door for someone bringing in some groceries, or we love helping. that's true happiness is through helping and serving. And so let's try to serve Srila Prabhupada and thank him for bringing his books and his wisdom to the West. And I want to be a yes man when it comes to helping, and I like to be able to say yes, and that I can do that. And we all are so busy, and we have so many services, hopefully, and so it becomes hard sometimes to have one-on-one, to sit down and have a long conversation. It becomes kind of hard to do that sometimes, but that can be a lot of fun too. And but keep helping, keep serving, this is temporary. Temporary. Remember how winter seemed like it would never end. It seemed like a long winter. When is it? We had some cold days last winter. Sometimes it feels like, oh, winter's never going to end. And then when 70 degrees would have felt so wonderful, but then now, sometimes 70 degrees, we're so used to a little more heat. And so sometimes 70 degrees outside in short sleeve can almost feel a little cool. So it's very temporary. The seasons are temporary, but, the soul and consciousness are eternally linked, and life is consciousness. The soul is consciousness. And a new wife, Srila Prabhupada says, a new wife has to be patient that a child will come, but has to focus on serving the husband. And in the same way, we have to be patient, and we have to serve Guru and serve the servant of the servant, and bow to Sri Krishna's compassionate nature. And a couple minutes for any final thoughts or questions from anybody. Jai Keshava, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. In text 30, it says, I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Keshi demon. So when Arjuna says, I am forgetting myself, does that mean he's forgetting that he's spirit soul? Or maybe you can expand on that.
Yeah, like he's identifying with the body. I'm forgetting myself, and he's forgetting his nature of a kshatriya. That's his duty. A kshatriya doesn't usually show any weakness or show any vulnerability, and is supposed to just march onto the battlefield and fight. And that's how we have to be too. Even if we feel a little trepidatious, or I'm feeling a little nervous to go distribute books in this certain environment. It's an environment I've never distributed in before or something, but we have to get on the battlefield and fight, because it gives Sri Krishna pleasure and makes Srila Prabhupada happy to distribute his books. And so Kshatriya, has to fight, and it's glorious to die on the battlefield for a Kshatriya, but Arjuna's having a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty, because he's getting overwhelmed by his mind, and his mind is reeling, and he's identifying a little bit with his temporary body, and whereas his questions will be answered as he surrenders to Krishna. So, all right. Thank you very much. Bhagavad-gita as it is, Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Hey, Krishna.